Well, good morning, everyone. It is certainly good to see you here this morning. And I have to say, I mean that both figuratively as well as literally. If I've gotten close enough to you, you've been able to see my red eyes. And please don't think that, Pastor's been out on an all-night bender, heading into Christmas Eve. And also, don't mistake it for me being crying all night long. I didn't have anything like that happen. Spending about 5 hours in urgent care yesterday and then trying to get some antibiotics so that it feels like I've been sick for like a month and a half or something like that. And so trying to make sure that I could be here this morning. And so one eye was like swollen up. The other eye was getting close to it. And so I was like, man, I don't even know am I going to have to be able to preach blind? Can I even do that? Will it be okay? And so at one point last night, as I was putting in the eye drops and then getting up this morning, also, I realized, okay, I could do this. It's going to be all right. It's kind of like Paul's scales falling from his eyes. I was like, okay, everything's good. And so I'm so glad to see you here. Not only that, just because it's Christmas Eve, and so sometimes you wonder, like, man, is he going to show up? It's like, people are going to just stay home. Are they going to do their Christmas stuff at home? And so I'm really, really glad to see that you did decide to stay here, all right, and come here. Not stay at home, but actually come to church this morning. So it's good to see you. You look good, all right? Maybe not everybody. Scott, I'm not talking about you, but everybody else looks good. So this has been a really kind of weird year for me. I was thinking about that kind of heading into these last two messages here in Revelation. It's kind of been as we're doing Stranger Things, it's kind of been a strange year in a lot of ways, especially, as I'm getting into the Christmas season. I've been trying so hard to kind of get my heart and my mind into it this year, and I'm just struggling. Is there anybody else? Am I alone, or are you the same? Okay, good. A few people over here, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. It's good to feel sometimes that you're not alone. And so this year it's kind of been a struggle for me. And I know there's all kinds of things that have led into that for me, outside forces and circumstances beyond my control. And my heart just is not exactly in it, which kind of leads me to where I'm going with this. And really it's kind of a hard issue, isn't it? When you talk about getting prepared and getting your heart ready for the time of year it is, the season that we're in, it's really a heart issue. And so what I want to do this morning, and this may be for me more than it is for many of you, but what I want to do is I want to try to prepare our hearts. This being Christmas Eve, tomorrow being Christmas Day, I want us to make sure that we have our hearts prepared for what God has in store for us, for what God has in store for you. I don't know if you even came here this morning thinking, God, what is it that you have in store for me? Or even asking that question or even thinking about it. But I want us to actually consider, what is it that God wants of us and from us and for us? And what's interesting is that that's really what Revelation is all about. And for those of you that have been going with us in this series, you've been kind of tracking along, either been here or listening online, then you know that that's really what Revelation is all about. I mean, this whole idea of Jesus revealing himself to us. As we've been seeing that from the very beginning, that this book is really for him, talking about Jesus. It's about him, talking about Jesus. And it's to him, talking about Jesus. I mean, that's what Jesus is revealing to us. It's not that he's some carpenter's son that we read about, right? We know who his parents are. It's not that he's some lowly shepherd or that he's some rabbi, some teacher that these disciples are following. It's more than that. As you get into Revelation, we see this bigger picture, this bigger idea, this bigger revelation of Jesus being described as the great high priest, right? We've already talked about that. The great high priest who goes before God on our behalf. That's who Jesus is. It's one image we get in Revelation. Not only that, but he's the slain Lamb of God, meaning that Jesus is the one who became our sacrifice, taking on our sin, right? Becoming the one who laid down his life, the Lamb of God for us, who alone, right? Remember we talked about this, who alone is worthy to sit on the throne of God. That's who Jesus is. Not only that, we began to see that Jesus is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, who was and is to come. It says it over and over and over again of Jesus. He was and is to come. It's who Jesus is. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so that's part of what Revelation is doing for us. It's helping us to be able to focus and to recenter our hearts on Jesus. That's one of the reasons this book is so important for us. And I don't know about you, but I need that from time to time. I need that with all of the distractions that are in our world, all the distractions that are all the time vying for our attention. I need to recenter my heart. I need that, especially when I got things competing for my time, competing for my attention. I need to be able to recenter myself and to not get caught up on the wrong things. How many of you are like me, you get caught up on some of the wrong things? Me too. My heart gets tied up in a lot of wrong things. I don't know, you may be this year as you are celebrating Christmas with your families, you may be going through some of those kinds of things. You may be going through some tensions in your family. Things that have happened long ago, maybe things that are more recent, and maybe there's some tensions there between you and your parents. Maybe it's a tension that has been created between you and your spouse. And the point is, when those things happen, we need to be drawn back into what the reason for the season, right? You hear that all the time. What this is really all about, and that is Jesus. And where it all started on that faithful night, as we look at Bethlehem, I mean, just think about it like this. If we were to really think about and understand what God was doing as he broke into human history, because most of you know that story, you've heard that before, breaks into human history, wraps himself in human flesh, and the Bible says that he came to dwell among us. You see, I think when we really wrap our hearts around that story never gets old. When you really think what God has done and continues to do for us, God with us. You see, that's a story that really is a gift each and every single day, not just one time a year. But I know that some of you, because I've had conversations before about this, I know that some of you may be thinking this morning, yeah, Will, I hear what you're saying. I'm listening. I really am. But what is that? What is this birth story of Jesus? What has that got to do about my life here and now? I mean, have you ever thought that before? Or maybe not even said it out loud, but just kind of thought it in your heart before. This idea, okay, I mean, I get it. We read this story every year. We read it with our family. I believe it. But how does it affect my struggles here and now? How does it affect me being able to pay my bills? How does it affect my relationship issues that I have in life? How does it affect the stress that I'm going through every single day of my life? Some of you may be thinking, I just don't see all of the connections. I don't see where it's relevant. What I want to do this morning is I want to connect the dots. As we recenter our hearts, as we recenter our minds on this great gift of Jesus that we see not just in the Gospels, but that we see here in the book of Revelation. It's not just a Christmas story, but it's God's story. It's revealing himself to us over and over again. And so what I want to do is, as we focus on this gift of Jesus, I want you to be able to connect the dots, not just to back then or 2,000 years ago, but I want you to be able to connect it here today. Speaking of gifts, probably one of my all-time favorite stories to tell around Christmas is a story about a family who had twin boys. Do any of you have twins here? Any of you? Any twins? Nobody? All right. It's a story of about a family who has, there you go. I thought somebody did. Marcel's got twins over there. It's a story about these twin boys, and they were only alike in their looks. They were different in every other kind of way imaginable. right? One was this eternal optimist. The other one was this extreme pessimist. And they were literally, that's how they were. They were opposite, and just with their looks, that was it. That was the only thing they had in common. So this father, one time, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna test. I'm gonna do this test. And I'm gonna see, what's going on here and try to get down to the bottom of it. Is this really how my kids are? And so he decided, that one Christmas he was going to go to his son, who was a pessimistic person just in general, right? And he was going to load his room with every kind of gift imaginable. All the Christmas gifts that he wanted, he was going to get him everything, right? Everything his heart desired, he was just going to fill his pessimistic son's room with that. Now, his optimistic son, on the other hand, he was going to give him a different gift. What he decided was he was going to fill his room with horse manure. Sounds like a good dad, doesn't it? And so he's going to test, find out what's going on here. Is this really the case? And so he goes to his pessimistic son's room first, and he sees him sitting in the middle of all those toys, all the gifts that he had got him, and he's just crying bitterly. And he goes in there and he's like, son, I don't get this. What's wrong with you? You got all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, but Dad, you don't understand. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, there's all, I can't play with everything. And there's all this stuff. Other people are going to want it, and it's all mine. I don't want to compete with them. And all these things that need batteries. I'm going to have to constantly being able to put batteries in there. And all these toys, I mean, they're eventually going to get broken. And he just went on and on and on. And his dad was just flabbergasted. And he left the room and he shut the door and he walked down to his optimistic son's room, and he found him in the room dancing in the middle of the pile of manure, just dancing for joy. He said, son, what in the world are you doing? What's going on? He's like, Dad, I know that there must be a pony in here somewhere, and I just got to find it. One of my all-time favorite stories. Sometimes it's all about how you look at things. And as we look here in Revelation, I don't think anything could be truer than that of when we look at Christmas and how the two are related. Because how many of you know that the nativity is not just read in Matthew and in Luke, those gospels, which it's contained there, right? Even John kind of talks about the birth story in his own way. Mark just kind of skips to the life and ministry and actions of Jesus. But how many of you know that the nativity is not just told in the gospels, but it's also told in the book of Revelation? It's just told from a different angle. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about that as John is telling this story here in Revelation. Let me just kind of tell you, as you saw in the video there, what you're going to find out is that this is anything but a silent night. As we look here in Revelation, we're going to be seeing things from behind the curtain, so to speak. It's going to be looking at the birth of Christ with heaven's goggles, okay? And so I want you to just kind of imagine that, because we're going to have to look at this through the spiritual lens, and John is explaining this revelation, okay? So if you got your Bibles, look there at Revelation chapter 12. If you didn't bring a Bible with you, make sure you grab one on your way out today, because we give out Bibles each and every Sunday. If you're using electronic device, you can log on to our website, or you can go to our app, and you can download that app, and you can get the Bible through that as well. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. That's what it says. It says, now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. And we've been calling our series Stranger Things because of some of these stranger images that we read about. I'm going to talk about here in just a second. Verse 2, it says, then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. What is John describing here? Well, like I've already been able to set up for you, he's describing the nativity scene. With the chosen mother here of God being Mary, right? And she's wearing, remember, you see there this idea of this garland of 12 stars. I mean, that's, again, we've talked about this already, kind of represents the 12 tribes of Israel, could be also the 12 disciples. But the idea behind it is that she is representing this new messianic age, this new messianic community, meaning that with the birth of Jesus, God is literally changing everything. When it comes to God's people, right? As we look back at the Old Testament and we look at God's chosen, the Hebrew people, the Israelites as God's chosen people, now in the new Messianic age, the church is stepping forward. And so what we're seeing here is this same nativity scene being told just through a different angle. Same Christmas story, just from heaven's point of view. And I want you to look at what it says next in verse 3. It says, "And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on its head." Again, all these numbers are different references to completion and wholeness in the Bible, both 7 as well as 10. In verse 4, it says, "His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth." And listen to what it says, "to devour her child as soon as it was born." Now this is quite of a new thought when it comes to the nativity scene, if you think about it. As we read this and we're kind of understanding, okay, this is what it's talking about. We always talk about, like the stable, right? We always talk about the manger. We always talk about Mary and Joseph and the baby. We always talk about the shepherds that come, the wise men, the animals in the stable. We talk about all of that kind of stuff, but that's what we see, right? That's the images. That's what we buy in the stores. But here we have this new image, this new picture, as it were, and it's not something that's very common. What we see is this great fiery red dragon. How about that for your nativity scene? I bet you won't be able to find one of those in the store. I mean, could you imagine setting that up year after year, telling your children, hey, make sure you set, the camels up, the sheep up, baby Jesus. Oh, and don't forget the dragon, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing here. It's not something you usually think of around Christmas time. It's not something that you usually think of when you're singing Silent Night. But that's what we see in Revelation. From a different angle, we see that a war is brewing. God is doing something very historic. He's taking matters, as it were, into his own hands. He's taking on flesh and blood. He's becoming a baby of all things that represents God with us. And yet we see this dragon. And we know who this dragon is, by the way. We've already talked about that. If you haven't been here for some of our past sermons, we've already talked about the dragon is very straightforward in Revelation as being Satan himself. And so Satan is mounting this assault, right, against this baby. It says that he takes a third of the angels with him that are following him, these evil angels, these followers of Satan, and their sole purpose, it's very straightforward here, their sole purpose is to devour the baby. It's to devour the child. And so here's the point. This thing that God is doing in Bethlehem, the sleepy little town and the sleepy little night, the rest of the world, you see, doesn't really know what's going on. The rest of the world doesn't seem to be paying attention to it. The only people that we hear about in the story are some shepherds that are just, keeping watch at night, right? It's just some, random wise men who see this star in the sky and they're following it. Literally, we don't understand this from the story, but for years. I mean, so there's only a few people that's really even paying attention. I mean, after all, you kind of get it, right? I mean, here's God coming in the form of a baby, this monumental event, yet he's coming so humbly as an infant. I mean, you can't get any meek or milder than that, can you? I mean, God humbly coming to be with us on earth. But here's the thing. It's enough to get all of heaven. It's enough to get Satan and all of his followers' attention. And so the Bible says that he goes after the baby. And you may remember reading about in the gospel account of the story of the birth of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 2, when Herod orders all of the baby boys, 2 years and younger. He finds out that these wise men that he had actually sent to do this dubious plan of his actually trick him and don't come back. He says, okay then, fine, I'm gonna make an order, a decree to kill all of the infant boys from 2 years of age and younger. All of them put to death. You see, the devil goes after Jesus. And the devastation that happens from it is very, very catastrophic. Now, some of you, reading the Nativity from this angle, as we've been going through it, you think to yourself, man, I came to church this morning for this. I mean, I wanted a feel-good message, right? I wanted to be able to walk out of here and to be, feeling good about myself and about my family. I mean, what are you talking about, dragons and going after infants and babies and killing children? I mean, what does that really have to do with the Christmas story? And the truth is, it has everything to do with the Christmas story. That's how dramatic of a scene this is from heaven's point of view. I mean, not to mention, we can make a little bit of a positive twist to this a little bit, right? I mean, how many of you know anytime you add a dragon to a story, the cool factor elevates, right? Doesn't matter what story you're telling, just add a dragon to it and automatically it's cooler. Not in this case, though. John actually gets to see the Christmas story from heaven's point of view. And after this, we begin to see in Revelation 12 this war that breaks out literally in heaven, where the dragon, Satan, gets cast out of heaven and all of his angels with him. And what you need to know about this is, can I just be very plain and blunt? This is real. It's not make-believe. It's not made up. It's not something that some John here in this case, who is giving us this revelation, it's not some well-thought-up dream of his. This is real life. It's not. We're looking at this thing through spiritual lens. And when God broke into our world and he clothed himself with human flesh, and all that seems, right, we talk about it, it seems very innocent, doesn't it? I mean, that very act is a very innocent type of act, but what we sometimes fail to realize that when that happened, war broke out. And there's a spiritual battle. And here's a really big point that you can't miss, okay? And I want to bring this to your attention. As Christians and as the church, you see, we talk a lot about this battle already being won, and it's true. This battle that we're talking about here, this war literally has already been won. Jesus did that whenever he not only just came to this world, but then he died and became that sacrifice we talked about earlier, that sacrifice on the cross, and then 3 days later being raised from the grave, God resurrecting his son. You see, Jesus, he defeated Satan, he defeated sin, he defeated death. The war has, in a sense, been won. But listen, don't miss the fact, because this is so vital for your very life today, for your children's life, your spouse's life, that don't be mistaken, because the battle still rages on for us in this world and for our very lives. The battle is real. And that's what Revelation is really trying to make us aware of, right? That we can not just look at the here and now with our physical eyes, but we have to think spiritually and allow the Holy Spirit to allow us to see things as God sees them, as John is revealing to us. I mean, look at Revelation chapter 12, verse 17, the very last verse there in chapter 12, and it says this. It says, "And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." It says that the dragon was enraged. In other words, he is flaming mad. And who is he mad at? He's mad at the woman, but he's not just mad at her. He's mad at all of the offspring. And it describes it like this: those who follow and keep his commandments. Who's he talking about? He's talking about us. He's talking about Christians. He's talking about the church. And so I hope you're starting to see how all of this is connected, because it is, and it's meant to be. All of it is connected, how the Christmas story really does apply to our lives. While Christmas is the story, I mean, it's really the event of Jesus' first coming. Revelation is the event of Jesus' second coming and the final coming, as it were. And these two events in the Bible and the Scriptures are inseparable. Meaning they have to go together. You can't take them apart. One without the other makes the other one less important. And so these things go together. In fact, without Revelation, then the Christmas story, if you think about it, it's just not as impactful. Revelation is really kind of part two of the Christmas story. I mean, think about it this way. Jesus came as a helpless baby so that one day he could return as this all-powerful king. Does that make sense? He came as this helpless baby so that he could return as this all-powerful king. Think about it like this. You know, Jesus came to this lowly town in Bethlehem, and then he lived his life, came to Jerusalem, and died, right? And was resurrected up into heaven, and that Jesus will one day return, and with him, he's going to be ushering in the new Jerusalem, this new city of God. That's what we read about in Revelation chapter 21. It's all connected. And it's meant to be. And for us that are trying our best to get our focus on Jesus, for one of the best ways we could do that is to focus on the Christmas story in such a way to think, you know, that's not just some good old story, but no. That's something that affects me now, here, today, and for the rest of my life. Jesus came as a helpless baby so that he could return as an all-powerful king. And most importantly, Jesus is coming because he's already come. If there's anything that shows us, like, for example, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of things going on in life and confusion, in the midst of pain and suffering in this world, and if you don't have it going on in your world right now, look around, because there's tons of it that's happening. The question that always seems to come up, the question that we always seem to ask ourselves is, how long are we going to wait? And where is our hope from? Think about that. How long are we going to wait, and where is our hope from? See, that's true of every single person here. Every single one of us in this room, we are all waiting for something. And not only that, we're all wondering, you know, where is it that our hope can be found. Where am I going to place my hope? Where am I going to put my trust in where my hope is? And one of the things that Revelation does, just like the Gospels do for us, they tell the birth story of Jesus. We recognize that we are all waiting upon a Savior, right? That's the one thing that we see, not just in the Gospels, but here in Revelation. We're all waiting on a Savior who's bringing the hope into the world, right? He is the hope of the world, in fact. And so both the birth story, think about this, both the birth story and the second coming of Jesus proclaim what? Hope. Both of them do. And you may be sitting here this morning, you think, gosh, that's really what I need in my life. You know what I would say to that? Me too. I need hope. I can't live a day without it. I need hope. And so maybe we can all stand here today and make that recognition. You know what? This hope that's coming into the world, that's the hope that we trust in. That's the hope that we look to. It's all tied up in Jesus. And so maybe you're here, maybe you're listening. I don't know. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, Will, that sounds great. But really, do you have any guarantee that he's going to come back again? It's an honest question, isn't it? And maybe you're thinking that this morning. Maybe it's been something you've thought about before. Let me give you something to think about, okay? Here's something that I would first bring to your attention. One sure guarantee that we know that Jesus is coming back and that he will return is the simple fact that he's already come the first time. You see, God already broke into time and space and existence. God already came into our world to be God with us in flesh of Jesus. You see, God's already done that. That means that he can and will do that again. Does that make sense? The first thing I want you to know is just simply that not only did God do that once, but that he will do it again. I love. If you ever get a chance to pick up the Bible and just want to read some kind of encouraging words, or maybe words that you can relate to, always look to the Psalms. I love how the psalmist says in Psalm 39, verse 7, he says this, how long, listen to the ache in his heart, but the hope that comes. How long are we going to wait, O Lord? And then he says, my hope is in you. How long are we going to wait, O Lord? But my hope is in you. I kind of wonder this morning if you and I were to sit down over some coffee and we were just to have a very casual conversation and I were to say to you, hey, what are you waiting on? If I were to ask you, just over a casual conversation, what is it that you're waiting for? How do you think you'd answer that question? I think a lot of us would say things like this, oh, well, I'm just waiting on things to kind of click in my life. I'm waiting for the pieces to fall into place. I think a lot of people would say things like that. I'm just waiting to finally get out of debt, right? I've been working my way out of debt, trying to get back on my feet, trying to get things financially in order. I'm just waiting to get through this discouraging situation, the season of my life, this discouraging season with my wife. We just don't seem to be getting along very well, not communicating very well. Maybe it's with your kids. You're just not seeing eye to eye with your kids. Your kids are being rebellious. You're like, man, I'm just waiting for them to grow up. I'm waiting for them to mature, to get a clue. I'm waiting on that. What are you waiting on? What are you waiting for? Some people may say, you know what, I'm waiting on an answer from a doctor. I'm waiting on some good news. I'm waiting on a cure. I'm just kind of waiting for this promotion. I've been working the same job for so long. I've been working my way to the top. I'm just waiting on that. I'm waiting for retirement. I'm waiting to get out. I'm waiting to rest. What is it that you're waiting for? If you were to answer that question right now, what would you say? And then here's what I want you to think about when you answer that for yourself, okay? If you were to finish this statement, my hope is in, and then fill the blank. Once you find out and once you think about what it is you're waiting for, I want you to answer that question. My hope is in, and then fill the blank. And what would you say? I mean, and I want you to be completely honest. Don't Sunday school answer me this morning. Most of you know what I'm talking about. Sunday school, the always answer is, do you guys not go to Sunday school? What is the answer, Brody? Jesus, yeah. Most of the time, that's what we always answer, right? We always answer that because we think other people expect that of us, right? We want to be right. Don't do that. I know we're in church, but let's get real. In your most honest moments of life, if we were just to sit down and talk, no masks, no pretending, where's my hope? It's such a simple question, isn't it? But the answer to that question, it means everything. On Friday, as my family and I were coming back to the house, my youngest son, it was about 5 o'clock, my youngest son, Grady, looks up and he says, "Oh, look, a shooting star." So we all look up and try to focus on what it is, and we see quickly that it's not a shooting star because it's not coming downward, but it's actually coming outward. And so we like a whole lot of other people, got this video. I want to show you this video. Maybe you got a video kind of like this.
That's an alien.
How many of you saw this on the news? How many of you saw it live? Anybody see it live with us? Yeah. It was amazing. And as you see this playing out here, we're driving down, we're coming to the house, and we get on Massachusetts, and I pull over to the right side so we can actually film it better. And as I'm doing that, I'm watching all of these cars doing the same thing. Everybody's pulling off the side of the road. It was really weird. It was a very surreal moment. And then I see people start coming out of their houses. You know what everybody's doing? They all got their cell phones up, recording it, right? Just like what you see here. That's a cell phone recording. And so all these people are doing the same things, and I begin to hear these conversations happening in the houses that I'm right next to, and these people are like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. This guy here, I don't want to do the sound because I think he actually said something bad. But everybody's freaking out. They are. I mean, you can hear people say, is it a missile? I mean, is North Korea, did they actually shoot at us? Listen, I turned on the radio. My wife will attest to this. I turned on the radio because I wanted to hear what the radio was saying about it. And the radio, we found this guy who was broadcasting. I don't know who it was. But you should have heard the panic in his voice, telling his audience, hey, this is real, folks. We don't know. And how the sheer sensation of being so scared. I mean, it was quite astounding, really. All this mass panic. And those of you that saw the news, you know that it was actually the Air Force Base. SpaceX launched a rocket that shot some satellites up into space, and they didn't tell the news agencies, so it created this mass hysteria. Here's what I found fascinating. As I was thinking about my message this morning, when faced with something in life that you really don't have answers to, or perhaps circumstances are outside of your control, and you don't know how it's all going to end, you know what I found? That's where you really know where your hope is. And so I want you to hear me on this. This is so important. I'm not saying as a pastor, by the way, who has this whole thing figured out. Those of you that know me, you know for a fact that is not Will. That is not me. I don't have it all figured out. If you were to sit down and ask me that same question, Will, where is your hope? I'm not going to sit there and tell you that my hope is always where it needs to be. I'm not going to tell you that my hope is always in Jesus, because that's not true. Unfortunately, I would have to confess to you that there are plenty of moments in my life where that is not a reality. And there have been plenty of moments in my life where I have to be honest, and I have to tell you, you know what? I'm not living as Jesus is my hope. I'm not living my life like that. In fact, there are times where it's not just that I've placed hope in other things or in other people. It's that there are times in life where I've found that I'm really not living like I have any hope at all. And what I found out is there's a big difference between knowing the truth and actually living it. And maybe you found that to be a reality in your life as well. There's a difference between knowing something cognitively and feeling it in your heart and then letting it pervade every aspect of your life. You see, that's what the Christmas story is all about. This isn't supposed to be just words on a page. It's not supposed to be just some good old story. It's supposed to be something that affects how we live here and now, and that affects how we live for the rest of our lives. You know, John, who is writing us this revelation, most of you know that John is the same John in the Gospel of John. He's the same John that wrote, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? He's that same John, and I love how he describes in verse 14. Listen to what he says here. John chapter 1, verse 14. He says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." You see, we normally do communion at the beginning or towards the beginning of our services. Actually, that kind of falls closer to the middle, but today we intentionally decided that we're going to hold communion to this very moment. And so what I want us to do here, if communion is not something that you're familiar with, maybe this is your first time at our church or maybe first time at church in a long time, really what the Lord's Supper, communion, is all about is just simply spending time communing with the Lord. And so as we get ready to pass out the emblems, both the bread as well as the juice, I want you to understand something. That what Jesus started 2,000 years ago, that we have continued for centuries now, this idea of communing with Jesus, you see, it's all tied up in the birth story as well as the second coming. It's all about Jesus. And what we are doing is yearning for him to return. We're longing for that experience in our life. And I can't tell you, listen, I can't tell you, whatever it is you're going through right now, I can't tell you how it's going to end. But I can tell you how this ends. I can't tell you about the Lamb who was slain, the victorious King, the one who has conquered sin and death, the one who has provided forgiveness for your sins. It's all about Jesus. And so as we celebrate communion today, I want you to think about that, all right? Let's pray together. Father, we just thank you. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your mercy, God. We thank you for how you work. We thank you that you show up in moments that we need you, not just in life, but even as we gather here on a Sunday, on Christmas Eve, God, your presence is felt in this place, and we thank you for that. We thank you for being this baby that we talk so much about at Christmas time, but being so much more than that as well. Being our very Savior, being the one who provided a way that we could have a relationship with God the Father. And so as we come into this time of communion, God, we just thank you for that. We pray that we'll be able to come openly and honestly before you, placing our hope and our trust fully in you. Thank you for being so good. In Jesus' name we pray.